Hello, thank you for joining this presentation of our paper, Co-Designing with Orangutans, Enhancing the Design of Enrichment for Animals. I'm Sarah Webber from the University of Melbourne in Australia. I'm presenting on behalf of my co-authors Marcus Carter, Wally Smith and Frank Vetere. This paper responds to the challenge of adapting interaction design methods to include animals as active participants. In this work, we reflect critically on the design activities we undertook in creating digital enrichment for orangutans, and suggest some ways in which qualitative and quantitative methods from the animal sciences could be combined with design-based research when designing for animals. When designing digital technologies for animals, a grand challenge is to include non-humans as design partners. Animal-computer interaction researchers encounter substantial barriers to eliciting and capturing the perspective of non-verbal users. In a parallel of sorts with the work of the Scandinavian participatory design movement of the 70s and 80s, animal-computer interaction research is looking for new models of participation for non-humans, allowing them to contribute meaningfully to design. There's a long history of designing spaces and devices for animals. For example, the design of zoo enclosures has, through much of history, prioritised the public viewing of animals, but zoos are now giving increased attention to enabling captive animals to perform behaviours which are psychologically important to the species, alongside those needs of human stakeholders and the cultural expectations of zoos. Some zoos are now regularly conducting animal welfare assessments to evaluate enclosure design. In addition, zoos often add environmental enrichment, which provides animals opportunities to work, or encourages physical movement, or offers cognitive stimulation. Enrichment includes puzzle feeders, food scatters, additional physical structures, as well as visual, olfactory or tactile stimuli. Allowing animals to work for food has been shown to improve welfare, not least by allowing animals increased control over their lives. However, constraints on time and resources often prevent zookeepers from providing enrichment which offers sufficient variety and ongoing challenge, particularly for primates. Melbourne Zoo, our partner in this research, sought to investigate the role that digital technologies might play in providing animal enrichment for the orangutans. In this collaborative project, we set out to develop a digital installation which could provide enhanced, varied enrichment for orangutans and also support zoos' objectives relating to conservation education by creating a visitor experience which enhanced engagement with animals, fostering respect for and interest in animals. This project therefore had to address the needs of orangutans and of a wide variety of human stakeholders, including animal welfare specialists, zookeepers, conservation educators, and zoo visitors. We adopted a co-design approach with the aim of exploring how interaction design methods could be adapted to co-design with animals in this complex zoo context. I want to now describe the design activities we conducted at each stage of the project and reflect on how they enabled us to address this challenge of co-designing with animals. To develop a rich understanding of the context and needs, we interviewed zookeepers and animal welfare team at the orangutan exhibit and back of house. We learned about routine practices and the extensive effort that zoo staff put into designing and creating enrichment, as well as conducting activities such as training and painting. We noticed that many of the enrichment activities required keepers to be present and fully engaged with an individual animal. We also examined the role that animal activities play in zoos' educational and conservation missions by allowing visitors to see behaviours which elicit a sense of connection. To explore the problem space and the scope of possible solutions, we ran design workshops with HCI experts and zoo personnel. With HCI researchers, we identified relevant technologies which might respond to the zoo's goals. Subsequently, we ran a workshop with zoo stakeholders and a small number of HCI researchers to examine in greater depth the aims and challenges associated with designing for orangutan enrichment. From these workshops, designers weighed alternative technologies for providing safe interaction, settling on a design which created a virtual touchscreen through a projected interface and movement sensor, connecting with orangutans. After a long period of development and waiting for ethics approval, we deployed the projected touchscreen system connecting with orangutans at Melbourne Zoo. Over the course of 4 weeks, we introduced the system twice weekly to the orangutans and observed it in use. We then ran debriefings to gain zoo staff input into the iterative refinement of the application. To evaluate the effects on animal behaviour of the installation, the Melbourne Zoo Animal Welfare Team conducted a randomised quantitative study which compared behaviours of the animals on days when they had access to enrichment to days when they didn't. The aim of this type of study is to make inferences about the potential effects of the installation on the population of zoo-housed orangutans, despite small sample size. The study revealed some clear differences in animals' responses, with the young female orangutan interacting with the installation far more than most. However, no statistically significant impacts on behaviour were detected. Through critically reflecting on the limitations of these design activities and discussion with animal behaviour and welfare experts, we have identified several ways in which these methods could be improved and combined effectively with methods from the animal sciences. The remainder of this presentation will explore these possible approaches. For understanding orangutans' behavioural needs, stakeholder perspectives and contextual constraints, contextual interviews were very fruitful. In the zoo setting, we've been able to obtain input from a range of disciplinary specialists. We found that our ability to reconcile different perspectives has grown as we've acquired more knowledge about the target species and about the perspectives of the animal disciplines involved. When there are different perspectives on animals' needs, these could be reconciled by techniques such as the Delphi-based method proposed by Vetere, that enrichment objectives should be informed by a prioritised list of what's required for species psychological welfare, generated by a panel of experts, and a formal survey of the animal's existing environment and experiences. This provides a promising approach which could supplement carers' existing knowledge about animals' needs when determining design objectives for interventions which target animal welfare. While design workshops were valuable, we found that not all HCI workshop outputs were relevant to the challenges at hand. Bringing together animal specialists and HCI researchers ensures that ideation is guided by expertise about animals' motivations and capabilities and enrichment goals. An important strategy in interaction design is to obtain early user feedback on conceptual designs. This is challenging when working with animals. Sketches and walkthroughs are inaccessible to non-humans. Like many ACI projects, we sought input from animals by deploying working prototypes. However, earlier input could be obtained from animals by developing safe, low-fidelity prototypes and using Wizard of Oz techniques to bring these mock-ups to life. Zoo stakeholders' observation and commentary on animals' use of prototypes resulted in feedback with considerable variance. We suggest that we could gain more consistent feedback through the course of a design project by nominating specific project stakeholders to review video footage of animals interacting with the prototypes. More precise observations about animals' preferences and interactions could be obtained by decomposing prototypes. In our deployment, we attempted to evaluate all at once the success of proposed mechanisms of interaction, consequences of interaction, such as access to food or photograph, and the cues, the stimuli which elicited interaction, such as moving dots or flickering lights. Examining separately the proposed interaction mechanisms, the consequences, and the cues would allow researchers to disentangle animals' responses to these different parts of an interactive intervention. A formal approach to comparing alternative solutions would be to conduct systematic preference tests and motivation tests. These are used by animal behaviour scientists to determine to what extent an animal is motivated to access a resource, such as enrichment or food, and whether it's preferred to an alternative resource. The quantitative animal welfare evaluation of the installation limited the ability to pursue the iterative design approach because it required that an intervention be fixed for the duration of the study and provided no information about which aspects of the system were most successful. However, alternative approaches exist for assessing enrichment and animal welfare interventions. In particular, qualitative assessments of animals' well-being can be conducted with instruments which capture carers' ratings on a Likert scale of animals' mood, sociability, and ability to achieve goals, or capture carers' subjective knowledge of animals and as individuals. These tools have been found to be quite reliable compared to the objective quantitative measures of welfare and could be deployed quite rapidly to evaluate a specific iteration of a prototype as part of formative evaluation. In summary, in our collaboration to design orangutan enrichment with Melbourne Zoo, we encountered significant challenges in adapting conventional co-design practices to working with animals in a complex setting with diverse human stakeholders. We contend that ACI designers can benefit from combining multiple types of data and techniques to understand the needs of human and animal stakeholders and evaluate interventions. In this paper, we suggest some ways to expand techniques for including animals as experts in their own experience and humans as proxies in designing for animals.